Good morning, gardening friends. It's Sunday. It's time for an update. But before we do that, perhaps it's time to just unmask myself. Now you can put a face to the voice that you've been hearing for 11 years. It is now 2021, season 12. I can't believe I've been actually producing videos on the garden for 12 years. I mean, it started off with a lonely zinnia plant that just went crazy and grew to like 10 feet tall. But that was just sort of, okay, I shot some video on that, much lower quality than you're seeing right now, but shot that and then said, oh, what's this YouTube thing? I'm going to post it up there. And that's really where it all began. And the gardening blog has followed me from one apartment to another and now back to my parents' house. And that's where I'm living now. Fortunately, I moved before the pandemic hit. And it's actually been kind of nice being back with my parents. There are issues, you know, always when you come back at an older age, but they're getting older too, so it's an opportunity for me to take care of them. In some ways, they're still very much, they could be totally independent without me being here, but it's nice to be here in case they need me. And there's been some benefits, so let's turn back around. And back to our usual starting point. And I wanted to tell you that they were encouraged, I think, by how things went last year. Let me grab something real quick. And they basically said, you know, let's expand the garden a bit. We're still in the middle of the pandemic. It's not like we're going to have a ton of people coming over, so if things fail, it's just burnt out plants and what have you. But let's take a look at kind of what the garden is looking like. You can see some of the stuff that we've been seeing towards the end of last season. The nasturtiums are growing. I'm not harvesting enough. And actually somebody on next door just asked about nasturtiums, so I'm thinking, let's give them one of the plants. Maybe that'll help someone else get a garden started. Yeah, there's weeds up on the hill. That has to be dealt with. There's a piece missing out of my little whirlybird, which I have down here now, so I've got to do that repair. The, oh, I forget what it's called right now. You'll maybe remember, but still got 3 leaves. I'm happy. We've got over here, we've got the nasturtium growing. I think at the end of last year, the Swiss chard had burnt out, but that'll get replaced. More nasturtium, so I'm doing quite well on nasturtium right now. Then we've got the beans and the celery. And I think one of the first things I'm going to do is, I've been wondering about the celery, if it's just got too much to it, and that's why it's not growing bigger. I do have celery seeds, so I can plant more, but I'm going to cut this back a bit. And so in the next video, you'll see where I've gone through and cleaned some of this stuff up. The beans, not doing so spectacularly, but that's not really where the story is this year. The story this year starts with this bush, which, if you remember from last year, we had a problem with this one sprinkler head. Turned out it wasn't actually sprinkling, and I got to talk about that a little bit more. But the bush is basically burned out. I'm not sure how old it is, but Mom and Dad have decided it's pretty much a goner. So what if we clear this out, take the bush out, and recover that area for planting? And along those lines, I was thinking, well, if I'm going to do that, I've got these boxes that I build, and there's more of them on the side that we just looked at. What if I built a bigger version of this box? We'll go back a few years in the blog when I grew some bigger, or built some bigger boxes. I even built one giant, like 2 foot by 4 foot box that was up on legs and hung against my wall. Look for probably season 14 or 15 for that. Or maybe I'll say 13 or 14. I'll see if I can put a link here so you can kind of see some of that. I made a whole big long video, actually a 3-part video. Maybe I need to go back and re-edit again, just so I can give you a taste of that this year. But I've built bigger. I can build big again. And what I'm thinking is if I make about a 16 by 16 box, I can fit 8 of them in this area. That's a lot of room to plant stuff. So up here will probably be tomatoes and peppers, and then I have no idea what I'm going to plant over here. Probably still some basil, because that's been something that we've actually been consuming. And then on top of that, for Christmas I got a nice little gift. 42 different seeds. This is a lot of different seeds to choose from. I don't have to order, I already have them. There are tomatoes in there. There are no peppers, but I have the seeds I saved for the peppers. There's a different basil in there, although I could probably preserve at least one of these, probably preserve this one basil plant here. I don't know how well it'll take after a transplant, but that's something I can try. So I'm looking at all of this, trying to figure out what I would plant, but there are things to consider there. So that's a positive. I've got more planting space, and there's also more space on the side, although this is really where the sun is during the day, especially early in the year. This is going to be my only real option for growing anything that absolutely requires sun. So that's kind of where we are on this. And that brings us over to this side yard, which I didn't really talk too much about last year, but here's what we're looking at. We've got a bunch of plants in the back. I'm going to give you the tour. And these are doing okay. I've redone some of the sprinklers to try and give them some help, and it is helping, but this is overgrown with weeds. You can see the grass growing underneath the bougainvillea. I need to get that pulled out. There's a lot of work here. The bougainvillea itself, let me sort of back up and give you a bigger view of that. That's growing a little crazy. I wonder if we could shape it a little bit more. We've got these pencils, or whatever you call them. Those need to be, oops, let me try and get my shadow out of the picture here. Those are a little aggressive, and then you can see in between, that's actually these leaves here. You see some of that here, you see a bunch of it here, there's some of it back there. That is coming from offshoots. I'm going to have to back way up here, of the pepper tree. This gigantic tree that we've got. And I cut a bunch of it out towards the end of last season. It just fills back in. It doesn't really, it just keeps growing. And part of the thing is that it puts out a really aggressive root system. There are stories on that root system, and if you care, I'll share some of them with you. But I got to get some of those weeds out. And so I'm just thinking, there's that, oh yeah, and then there's the purple orchid tree, which I've been trying to grow for a few years. And I mean, trees don't necessarily grow that fast. I think when it gets beyond a certain point, it's going to take off. This is probably twice as big as it was last year at this time. So that's a positive. It doesn't look like much, but it's developing, is probably putting out wider roots in the ground, which is a good thing. And I'm looking forward to when this thing matures. I'll see if I can put up a picture here so you can see what a purple orchid tree actually looks like. And that takes us back to the front yard where we started. And let me see, you can see I've got my lights here. This is the Garden of Lights project that I did towards the end of last year. I did like a 4-part series, and I've actually got more videos to come, but I'm waiting for some parts for the Bitman's Electronics Lab, BEL, which is the other part of my channel. But there was this one, yeah, it's still doing it. I don't know how well you're going to be able to see that. The water is just bubbling out of this one sprinkler head, and the sprinklers haven't gone off since yesterday. So I think we've got a leak in one of the valves. And if I go back around front, you'll be able to see where we got the valves. And let's see if I can still see it. I'd seen it before. Yeah, I can see a bit of moisture on this one here. So I think this is the valve here that is leaking. So I need to check a couple of things. I can see right there it says 3/4, so that's a 3/4 inch valve. I need to get a new valve. I'll have to shut off the water of the house. I can put the new valve on. It's not a big project, but if I do that, I'm hoping it'll stop it from leaking over there and stop us from wasting water, which is not a good thing. But that's kind of what I'm facing already on the first Sunday of the year. I'm sure there are other house projects to be dealt with, other gardening things. Like I said, I got the stuff in the back, so I'm going to go pick up some parts. Basically, while I pick up that valve, I'm going to go get some stuff to try and build at least the first box back there. So that'll be in the next episode. I'll show you a little bit of my planning there, and we'll start building. I figure, though, there's no real point in planting for at least another month, but I can plan before I plant. And if I plan, I can build. And so I can build what I need to do the planting that I want to do. I can also, it gives me time to figure out which particular seeds I want to put in the planters. And by then, hopefully, it'll be the earliest possible time that I can put the seeds in the ground and not worry. We don't really worry about frost in Southern California. Some of the citrus growers do have to think about it because sometimes it does freeze overnight, and that's a problem for them because it'll actually damage the trees and damage the crop. But for general plantings, I don't worry too much about it. I just sort of take the hits as they come and deal with it. You've seen, if a plant dies, okay, we'll plant another plant. I'm not going to make myself crazy over trying to save a plant. I will try to save a plant or keep it healthy as long as I can, but at some point you just got to call it. So that's essentially where I am on that. Planning, then building. Much like I did last year, I did some hardscaping stuff, and then I got really into the planting. And then summer came, and we had the growth, and we enjoyed some of the veggies. Some of them we grew, we didn't harvest at all, so those I probably won't grow quite as much of. But now I've got an opportunity to grow some more. So I'm excited. I'm happy. It's a new year. 2020 wasn't wonderful, at least as far as everything else. The garden did well. I'm happy with that, and it's something to do when you're stuck at home in a pandemic trying to not spread this disease. It's a horrible thing. We're still dealing with it here in 2021, but eventually, we've got a vaccine out now, and despite some of the hiccups with rolling it out, we'll get through this. So this is the Budget Gardener signing off, saying stay healthy, and may your thumb be green.